Okay, good evening. It's the 19th of November, Cabinet for November. Can I remind everybody, if you're going to speak, to introduce yourselves and don't pick up the mic by the gooseneck, please. I'm going to make an announcement before we actually go into apologies. I'm pulling the agenda item, which is currently 11, which is Wirham pedestrian level crossing. Just a brief statement. So I've listened to the views that have been expressed by Wirham Town Council, the local ward members, Councillor Beryl Ezard and Councillor Ryan Holloway, and many others, following a meeting earlier today with Vicky Slade, MP for Mid Dorset and North Poole. I have agreed to defer this paper to enable her to meet with the Office of Road and Rail to finally bottom out the realistic options for the level crossing at Wirham Station. And this paper may or may not come back at some future date. Okay, onto the agenda. Proper apologies. We have no apologies. Minutes. This is the minutes of the Cabinet meeting for 15th of October, 2024. Do any Cabinet members have any issues with the minutes as set out in the paper? No, in which case we'll sign them. Any declarations of interest? Nope. So item 4 is public participation. We had 4 questions from the public. They were all pertaining to item 11, the level crossing, and they were informed in advance that the paper was being pulled, and therefore they're not going to ask their questions. They aren't present in the chamber. Okay. So we're now on to question. Oh, which one's that one? Okay, he's online. He still wants to ask a question. Sorry, I apologise. So we have a question from David Redgewell, which is going to be answered by John Andrews.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Chair, my question tonight is on behalf of the West Dorset Transport Action Group, Dorset Catch the Bus Campaign and South West Transport Network. And we've been approached by residents in Lyme Regis following the withdrawal of the local town bus 71, which was funded partly by Lyme Regis Town Council, but in fact was an extra add-on to the primary school service that ran from Lyme to Charmouth Primary School. That was run by the Go Ahead South Coast Group, Dalmorey Coaches, and then the contract was awarded to ECT Group, Dorset Community Transport of London. The problem is that by doing that, we've ended up with no town bus service in Lyme Regis, leaving very vulnerable older people unable to make the big hills of the town. And so what we're asking really is if the county council, or Dorset Council, is the non-county council, and Lyme Regis Town Council can talk to ECT Group, which is Dorset Community Transport, they're a London organisation, to see whether we can find a solution to put back the town bus service, and for some partnership working between Lyme Town Council, passengers, and West Dorset Transport Action Group, and the bus users and the 2 councils to find a solution. I note we may have a bit of better news that we've got £3.8 million last night from UK government for the bus service improvement plan, and I would only hope that we can find a solution with some discussions. Yesterday's announcement may have helped us in that process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Redgewell, thank you very much for your question. I will answer the question you submitted. The Lyme Regis Town bus service was arranged between the bus operator Dameroy and Lyme Regis Town Council, making use of the fact that this bus was in the area following the school run. The town service was not managed or funded by Dorset Council. Dorset Council had a contract with Dameroy to operate the school bus to Charmouth Primary School. The council had to end this contract because the vehicle was no longer suitable for its needs, and Dameroy could not offer a suitable alternative. The number of children needing transport to their primary school was 11. Dorset Council was paying for a 32-seater bus, which was far too big for its needs. The larger bus was not always suitable for picking up children who live in the remote parts of the area, meaning the council had to fund additional taxis to pick them up, despite being their spare seats on the bus. From September 2024, the council therefore started a new contract for Charmouth Primary School using the 16-seater minibus. This is a more appropriate size for the number of pupils and to access remote narrow lanes. hence we could stop the taxis. We had discussion with Deputy Town Clerk from Town Council and Councillor Belinda Bowden on the 5th of June 2024, when we realised that we had to re-tender this route. We kept them updated throughout the process and informed them of the winning bidder, as soon as we knew, so that they could start negotiations. Unfortunately, the winning operator was unable to take over the town service. The other part of your question is 2P transfers are arranged between operators themselves because the council does not employ the drivers directly. Under the terms of our procurement framework, the council has a responsibility to facilitate 2P transfer if the incumbent operator believes that 2P applies. In this case, when the route was retendered, Dameroy did not declare 2P that would apply, and the council did not receive a request to facilitate 2P transfers. We understand that the Town Council is considering options for the town service, and we have been given details of potential grant funded that may be available to support a new service if they wish to make an application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. I trust that answers your question. We'll send you a copy.
All I would like to say, Chair, is in view of the fact we got a bit of extra money last night, got a lot of respect for the Executive Member for Transport and then from Western Gateway. Perhaps we can have a look at working with Lyme Regis Town Council if we can find a solution. That's all I'd ask.
Noted. The next agenda item is members' questions. So the first question is from Councillor Craig Monks, and it's going to be answered by Councillor Jill Taylor.
Thank you, Councillor Monk, for your question. It's a really interesting question, so thanks for bringing this up. We fully understand and appreciate the challenges and the profound difficulties facing many families across Dorset who need good quality, suitable and affordable housing. This includes the specific needs of households where family members have special educational needs or who are disabled, including those attending Mountjoy School, as you mentioned. Our own figures show that there is a high number and very broad range of people in need of housing. This is reflective of national housing and economic pressures, but is also reflective of the high level and complexity of support required within many of those families looking for a home. There is already excellent and detailed work carried out across housing, children's, adults and health teams to consider how best to support those families within the context of housing shortages and limited local and house type availability to match those specific needs. That work always looks to focus on supportive options for families, and the teams are always open to explore where a family are experiencing housing pressures and to seek realistic and sustainable solutions. We also work closely alongside our registered providers of social housing and private landlords to make sure that we are all aligned in the drive to find and provide suitable housing across the Dorset Council area and to minimise the pressures outlined in the question relating to distance and reliance on temporary accommodation. Just a bit of background on housing and the pressures that we're under. We have over 6,500 households currently on our housing register seeking social and affordable rented housing. During the year 23-24, our affordable housing programme provided just 508 new social homes, mainly through registered provider housing associations. And whilst this is considered very successful compared to other areas, which it is, we are doing really well, but we know that demand and need is considerably higher. Transforming and ramping up the delivery of affordable homes across the Dorset Council area is at the centre of this council's priorities, and we have formulated plans and actions at pace, adding to what we already do well, but doing much more to close those gaps. This includes making the most of available housing across the affordable and private rented sectors, and we work closely with families to help explore options for their short, medium and long-term needs. Sometimes the shortage of available properties in local areas means that there is a wait for most suitable or affordable home. But our housing registered team work with applicants to explore options and choices for families with specific support and housing needs. It is really, really difficult out there. If I had 1,000 houses today, that would not solve the issue. But that is the sort of numbers that we need today. They're just not there. In terms of how we let properties, this is governed by the Council's allocation policy, a statutory requirement covering the whole of the Dorset Council area and carefully planned to meet housing need fairly and effectively. Council officers will determine priority and band households accordingly, using a set of lawful criteria. Our highest priority bands include consideration of urgent and high medical needs, along with other factors which may be relevant to the families that you've referred to within your question. This is explained well within the allocations policy, which is available on our website. The Council is also subject to a range of legal duties to prevent homelessness, but also to provide temporary accommodation and support into settled accommodation when a duty is determined. Temporary accommodation, unfortunately, currently includes bed and breakfast accommodation, but on the plus side also includes some leased accommodation. This is either managed or owned by the Council. Recent investment to support operational objectives has shown significant success in high prevention outcomes, households prevented from homelessness, and therefore reducing the reliance on expensive and unsuitable B&B and temporary accommodation. Over the past year, this has resulted in the number of families in bed and breakfast reducing to 20 at the moment. That's our current level. That is still too high, but we're doing far better than an awful lot of councils. Given the pressures on housing, we are developing an accelerated and ambitious plan to deliver our housing strategy. At the heart of that strategy is a clear and ambitious vision to ensure our residents have access to affordable, suitable, secure homes where they can live well as part of sustainable and thriving communities. The delivery plan is underway and will be flexed to respond to emerging priorities and changes in pressure, legislation or guidance in relation to accommodation with support. Please be assured, Councillor Monks, that these priorities very much include the need to support families who have children in schools, such as at Mountjoy, alongside the broad range of demand for housing, and work across this council is coordinated to do this effectively, pragmatically, and with the family's needs at the core. I'm always happy to talk about housing, so should you want to get in touch with me and talk further on this when you've had time to digest my answer, you're more than welcome to either give me a ring or Teams or what have you. I've also run this past Councillor Sutton, as this also involves our special educational needs children. And I think you're happy with that response? Yeah, Councillor Sutton is okay. So thank you very much for the question.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor, for a very comprehensive answer. Councillor Monks, do you wish to have a supplementary for that one?
Only just to welcome the answer. It'd be a pleasure to discuss further. And I actually have a Costa Councillor Sutton who's going to join me in the new year for coffee at the Parents Mountjoy monthly coffee morning. So if you'd like to join us, I can vouch for the school's parents. They do a fantastic chocolate fudge brownie. Other cakes are available, so it'd be great to invite you both to come and meet parents at Mountjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Monks. And it's now your turn again, I believe, and Councillor Bartlett is going to answer the next question.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully you can hear me this time. So my second question is regards to Parnham House. So I wish to raise a concern regarding the time frame of the process and the restoration of Parnham House. To clarify, my question does not pertain to any particular planning application, but is rather the focus of the level of staffing, leadership and resources allocated to support the estate both within the Dorset Council and other bodies such as Historic England. Given the significant heritage, value and importance of ensuring progress, can you provide reassurances that sufficient resources and staff are in place to effectively manage and expedite this process? Furthermore, what additional measures or resources can be considered to control and accelerate the restoration efforts as a whole? And would the portfolio holder meet with me and the owners of Parnham Park to agree a way forward in preserving the estate? Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Shane Bartlett, Ward Member for Wimborne Minster and Cabinet Member for Planning and Emergency Planning. So can I just thank you, Councillor Monks, for your question. Parnham House is a Grade 1 listed country house in extensive grounds, dating largely from the mid-16th century, but in April in 2017 it suffered a catastrophic fire which resulted in around 75% of the building being reduced to a shell. The estate was subsequently sold in spring 2020 and the owner has restored parts of the building. The south wing remains in a very precarious state and is vulnerable to collapse due to it being unsupported and exposed to the elements. Officers have proactively sought to encourage the stabilisation of the building, including recommending urgent construction of a wind and watertight scaffold to prevent further decay and ingress of water. A grant has been offered from Historic England towards this work, which has not been taken up to date. It is therefore a challenging site where development which might not ordinarily be considered acceptable is being contemplated to facilitate restoration. This is by no means a simple or straightforward task. However, the Council has an experienced team with conservation, planning and other expertise to hand and good knowledge of the site. Throughout, officers have worked closely with Historic England and other agencies. The Council has also engaged an external consultant to review the viability and enabling development case of the development when the applications for restoration of the building are submitted. The local planning authority has already approved various applications for planning permission and listed building consent on Parnham Park, and has for some time advised the applicant to bring forward a master plan for the entire estate and submit applications as soon as possible. We have also encouraged a further pre-application advice from Dorset Council and other statutory consultees, including Historic England and the Environment Agency. This is important given the complexity of the proposed restoration and the likely very significant extent of enabling development within the registered park and garden and Dorset National Landscape, which is expected to be proposed to fund the restoration of the house. The onus is on the owner to request further pre-application engagement, enter into a planning performance agreement, should they wish to, and submit an EIA screening request and make applications for restoration of Parnham House. I'm happy to meet with Councillor Monks, the applicant, and officers if you feel this would be helpful, and I've spoken to officers and I'm perfectly happy for us to meet on site. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bartlett. Councillor Monks, do you have a supplementary?
Again, thank you for the response. The main concern I have from experience of the ward is the time frame is over 4 years now that we are where we are right now. and it's my experience from what I've been told that there are a number of different reasons for that, which I won't go into now. But what I would love to do is welcome you to meet with me and the owner so we can discuss this around a table. Their cakes aren't as good as Mountjoy's, but they do provide good refreshment. So you will be looked after if you can come to Parliament and help me work a way forward so we can get the house restored. And of course, that extends to the leader of the council as well.
Thank you, Councillor Monks. The next question is from Councillor Borden. I think it's going to be answered by Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Chair. Belinda Borden, Lyme Regis and Charmouth. Please, could the portfolio holder for place services confirm when they're expecting to hear whether the outline business case for the Coastal Transition Accelerator Programme for Charmouth and Swanage has been successful, so when our local stakeholders, organisations and residents could be fully involved in shaping the priority proposals?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Bowden. John Andrews, member for Sherborne East and Cabinet member for Place Services. The short answer is no. The long answer is we anticipate hearing from the Environment Agency in the next 2 to 3 weeks as to whether the business case has been successful. And if so, a subsequent paper will be taken to the December Cabinet meeting seeking its approval.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Do you have a supplementary?
Please. Are you also in a position to advise or find out whether this DEFRA Pathfinder project would still go ahead even if other Environment Agency funding for local authorities was reduced or cut by this government?
No, but I will seek an answer and get back to you.
And you've got another question, Councillor Borden.
Thank you. I'm afraid this one's a bit longer. The 3 Dorset-wide environmental networks, Zero Carbon Dorset, Sustainable Dorset and the Dorset Climate Action Network, recently held the second Dorset COP when over 300 organisations and individuals were able to hear inspiring stories of community-based climate and environmental actions, ideas and aspirations. Here's what was reported in Dorset View. Hundreds of people attended Dorset's second community-led Conference of the Parties, Dorset COP, which was held on Saturday the 2nd of November at Bournemouth University. The university's new Vice-Chancellor, Professor Alison Honour, opened the event alongside Lois Betts, the university's Sustainability Manager, recently elected local MP Jessica Toll, and the Dorset COP organisers. Jessica Toll MP said, "There is no more profound a challenge or driver of global instability than climate change. While the annual climate COPs are really important international conferences, we cannot tackle climate change without local, community-level action. That's why this Dorset Local COP was such a brilliant event, bringing together local people, businesses and policymakers to look at what the big issues are and how to address them, from renewable energy and carbon capture to the circular economy and sustainable transport. I will be working with change makers here in Bournemouth West, this is the MP still speaking, by the way, to address some of these huge challenges, including cleaning up our seas and rivers, moving us towards a zero-waste economy and ensuring nature's recovery. So while it was encouraging to see officers from the sustainability and electoral services teams attending the COP and the low-carbon Dorset displays, policymakers from Dorset Council were in really short supply, even fewer than last year. I'm happy to report that the perception of Dorset Council's action on climate change was marginally better than last year, according to those attending the Carbon Literacy Workshop for town and parish councillors and community groups. But this was from 0 last year to about 20% of the audience. Given the clear, concerning and continuing disconnection between what Dorset Council is actually achieving and what some of the most engaged people in the county think we are doing, would it be possible for Dorset Council to undertake now to support next year's Dorset COP in Sturminster Newton with collaboration, communication and, crucially, participation? Can I just add one thing, which is Saturday the 1st of November. You heard it here first.
Thank you, Councillor Borton. So I'm responding in my capacity as Cabinet Member for Climate Change and Environment, so Councillor Nick Ireland for Crossways Ward. Our communities are integral to our journey to net zero, and it's notable that public concern about climate change is significantly higher in the southwest than the national average. But the proactivity of our community networks and Dorset COP are also a testament to how this is catalysing grassroots action. Officers tell me that this year's COP was another bustling and constructive day of discussion and debate, and I'm proud that they participated again. Once more, to showcase the significant work that the Council is doing. They have told me how invaluable it is as a forum for us to engage and learn on how to push further and faster. We're continuing to do more to keep our residents informed of what the Council is achieving. On top of our existing channels and activities, we have, for example, launched a new climate and nature newsletter. We've recruited an officer to do more external engagement, and we've started to reach out more to local councils and schools. Throughout the summer and now into autumn, we've also been touring Our Journey to Net Zero photo exhibition around the county, which you referenced. This inspiring collection of photos and stories highlights how our low-carbon Dorset programme has been helping local businesses and communities prepare for a greener and more sustainable future. If anyone here hasn't already seen it, it's currently on display in the reception area of County Hall, so please do take a moment to look on your way out. The seriousness of our commitment to act on climate change is clear, both by me taking on this portfolio myself and through its centrality to the council plan, which we're discussing later. I am therefore, of course, disappointed that I couldn't attend this year's event due to diary commitments, but I very much look forward to attending Sturminster Newton, and it says here, next year, once that date is determined, but Saturday the 1st of November, 2025. So I'll plan to be there if I can. Thank you. And do you have a supplementary question? So we're on to item 6, is it? Yeah, item 6, forward plan. Do any members of Cabinet have any comments to make on the forward plan as presented in the papers? No. There is one thing I should probably point out. There's an item on the forward plan which is something to do with Purbeck. It's called the Purbeck Pleasure Boat Bylaw 2013 Amendment. We think it doesn't need to come to Cabinet and it needs to go instead to full council, but that's yet to be fully confirmed, but, so that may disappear. George is nodding head. So that is off the forward plan and will be at full council. I have no idea what it means anyway. So item 7, this is the first of the papers tonight. This is the September 24, brackets period 6, Financial Management Report 2024/2025. It's going to be presented by Councillor Simon Clifford.
Good evening, Councillor Simon Clifford, Member for Chickerell Ward and the Cabinet Member for Finance and Capital Strategy. Sorry, yes, that's right. So, got 2 papers here, one of which is just a routine where we are at this moment in time, and one of which is a little bit more forward-looking. A few weeks ago, I cautiously welcomed the government's national budget, and I was right to be cautious because as the details have emerged, it's becoming less and less welcoming. There are significant challenges facing this council before what we had hoped would be a more helpful budget. It has not turned out to be so. We are still waiting to work through the details. And actually, in effect, we don't find out what state our finances are going to be in with the government grant until the week before Christmas, maybe a week and a half before Christmas. It comes in incredibly late, and it leaves us with our finance teams with a huge amount of work to do over the course of Christmas and early January in order to pull our budget together. So lots of work still going on, lots of detail that we still don't know, and 'twas ever thus. It's very frustrating to be in a position where we're in a one-year settlement from government, although we are told things will improve in further years. So as to these papers, as I say, they work in tandem. We had hoped there'd be some money on for social care. There may still be, but it hasn't come clear what it is yet. We know that there's a position on national insurance that at the minute has the potential to be extremely difficult and challenging for our care network in particular. There is a lot of pressure being brought to bear on government in order to be more forgiving and more relaxed and flexible in their approach to the care sector so that those costs don't get immediately passed on to us as a recipient. We've got inflation figures coming out tomorrow, which are predicted to go up as a very rough guide. 1% in inflation equals about £3 million of cost to us. And more importantly, if inflation goes up, it leads to further increased pay demands from staff outside and our suppliers, and they get passed on to us. So there's a chain of events that is uncomfortable to look at from outside, and very little we can do to influence other than lobby, and that's something that we are all doing. You'll see in the papers today, the Q2 paper, that our position is becoming adverse, and that's due to we're helping more people, which is good news. It's statutory in what we have to do. It's also extremely expensive. In terms of adults, we are doing really good work there, but it does come at a cost. In terms of children's, we're actually managing the numbers coming to care extremely well, but the costs are increasing. So again, it's coming to bite us in every direction. What I would draw your attention to before I give you a chance to ask questions is to look at the level of reserves. I am sure that you, like me, will have concerns about the level of the proposed use of reserves over the next year or so. That's both in this report and in the next report. I can assure you that I am challenging officers robustly to ensure that all expenditure is minimised, and I will update you in the Q3 report that comes in January. In between times, we do have a budget advisory day that's set for the 13th of December, where we'll spend a day in this chamber giving councillors an idea of what the budget's going to look like for the future year. So if I call it a day there and let people sit down and ask questions.
Thanks, Councillor Clifford. Are you proposing the recommendations that are laid out in the paper?
I am now, yes, of course. I do apologise. So there's a set of recommendations, some which are very specific and some which are more generalised in terms of the Q2 budget report.
Thank you. I believe Councillor Biggs is going to second. Is that correct?
Yes, Richard Biggs, Property and Assets and Economic Growth, Dorchester Poundbury Ward. I do second this report and the recommendations within it. I'd like to say I like to support it. It's probably not the correct word because there's some really difficult things in there to read and some rather worrying trajectories and use of reserves which are concerning. But we are where we are, and we face some serious challenges which I hope we all put our thinking caps on when we get to the Budget Cafe in December. Thank you.
I'll now open the floor up to questions from non-executive members. Councillor O'Leary's got his hand up very quickly.
Thank you. Would the Cabinet member let me ask a question on the projected overspend? It says the projected overspend is £15.9 million. Does the Cabinet member therefore expect that he'll be forced to put council tax up by the maximum amount in the next budget?
So at the minute, it's too early to say, but I would point out to the councillor for Littlemore that his party, when they were in power, had a 5-year projection which had maximum council tax for the next 5 years.
Thank you very much. I'm glad you said that and made it political. In a leaflet issued in my ward with the Cabinet member's name on it, it says the following. Simon says, the Conservative Dorset Council keep increasing council tax at a time when families are struggling with their bills and they want to do it again next year. That was issued in December last year, so therefore you are likely going to put council tax up next year by the maximum amount, as stated in this leaflet you were obviously opposed to. Is what Simon says and what Simon does two different things?
I'm not quite sure what the point was there. What I would say is that we have yet to announce any council tax increases or what level it's going to be at. That process starts on December the 13th, as I outlined, and will appear in forward budgets.
Councillor Parry.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Andrew Parry, West Parley Ward. You referenced SEND provision as one of the, and children's services as an area for overspend. And I'm acutely aware that in recent reports there has been a challenge around the timeliness of EHCPs that should be completed within a 20-week timeline. They are currently some way off achieving that. I'm sure the Cabinet member will give us confirmation on what those numbers are or an appropriate director. But that sounds like you're running a very real risk of delivering children's services by spot purchasing because we are not delivering in a timely manner on educational healthcare plans. Would you agree that's a burning issue behind your budget overspends, and what will the Cabinet be doing to address it?
I'll be very pleased to hand that on to the Cabinet member responsible and the support staff and directors.
Yeah, I'm not able to answer it completely comprehensively at this moment in time, but from the numbers I recall, although our ECHP turnaround rate isn't at the recommended level, it is actually the highest in the southwest, and it's significantly above the national average. I'm not saying that makes it okay, but I'll hand over to Paul for the rest of the answer.
Thank you. Yeah, I haven't got the exact figures in front of me. I can send them to you, Councillor Parry, after this meeting or sometime tomorrow morning. We are continually working on our timeliness in relation to EHCPs. We have extra provision in our teams, extra capacity at the minute. We do have some delays caused by a lack of educational psychology. Sometimes we do have to spot purchase educational psychology, so that is one of the challenges that we're facing, and we're working through that as quickly as we can.
Can I just remind officers and members to introduce themselves, please? So that was Mr. Dempsey, and Councillor Close-Sutton will now introduce herself again. So.
Yeah. Councillor Claire Sutton, Cabinet Member for Children's Services, Education and Skills. Apologies. Yeah, and the other element, just to follow on from that, is obviously the turnaround time of ECHPs isn't as you know, Councillor Parry, entirely within our control, because we also depend on our health colleagues very much in terms of timeliness. That's all really at the moment.
Thank you, Chair. If you'll indulge me, just two supplementaries. One is in the response to me about the spot purchasing figures for Ed Sykes. Could the Director indicate to me the cost variation between a planned purchase and a spot purchase, so we have some understanding of the cost variance there? In respect of the issues around, the challenge between the relationship between this authority and our partner authorities, health being the dominant one in this area, could the Cabinet member indicate, please, what action has been taken to address that problem?
Claire Sutton, Cabinet Member, Children's Services, Education Skills. Yeah, okay. Just being on the safe side. Yeah, so in terms of the relationship with our health colleagues, on this particular item, I haven't got the information at this moment, but as you know, we are obviously working closely with our health colleagues in a number of environments, including the Health and Wellbeing Board, the new Birth to Settled Adulthood, etc., etc. But hopefully, our Director, Paul Dempsey, can provide a fuller, more comprehensive answer. But I'll get back to you if we're not able to provide a sufficient answer this evening.
Thank you, Paul Dempsey, Executive Director of Children's Services. If I may, Councillor Parry, provide a full written answer. There's quite a lot of details in there in relation to the costs and relationship with health, so I'm happy to provide a full written answer.
Thank you, Mr. Dempsey. I believe Councillor Suttle is next.
Someone turn. Councillor Gary Suttle, Swanage. If I could go back to money, which we seem to have strayed off, and our portfolio holder. In the report, we've always held a 10% of the general fund as reserve, and the report indicates that the way things are going, that's going to be required to change. At what point would you see that to be critical?
I'll let the 151 officer answer that. I think we're getting down towards levels where we should be very concerned. And I think if I hand over to the 151 officer, finance director, to give his view, as it's far more important and insightful than mine.
Thank you. Good evening. Aidan Dunn, Section 151 officer. It's a very important question, one that I'm asking myself constantly at the moment in terms of the context of the finances. And this report is highlighted as high risk, and that is an important symbol of the situation we and local government in general finds itself in. And Councillor Suttle's absolutely right. We're describing here, I think we've, up until this point, over the first 5 years as the council, been able to set aside 10% of our turnover as a general fund reserve, as a safety net. And that's getting increasingly difficult. And so the two papers that you have in front of us this evening describe that if we carry on going as we're going, then it's going to be extremely difficult to maintain that 10%. So this is raising some alarm bells. And as Councillor Clifford has described, he and the administration is putting us under, rightly so, extraordinary pressure to contain our spend within acceptable levels. I think against the reserves generally, we have either general fund reserves or earmarked reserves, and we do keep them under review on an annual basis. At the end of the year, we take that view. But I think ultimately, when we come to the end of this financial year, it is going to be tough. We do use those reserves, or we have used some of those reserves on an invest-to-save basis to essentially to invest, to change, to transform the organisation through. And I think that's a really important context of not only the next paper, but the subsequent two papers as well, where we start to describe the investment or the sense of scale of investment to transform the organisation. But my message, I think, to the whole council is this is not a comfortable place. It's not a comfortable place for local government. It's not a comfortable place for Dorset Council. And so it is going to be tough over the coming months, if not years. So I haven't got a specific, at what point do you get, do the alarm bells start ringing? I think my sense is we're painting a picture here, describing a picture. It's really tough financially, and we're taking it very seriously. Thank you.
Councillor Suttle, do you need to ask anything else? You done? Anybody else from non-Cabinet members? No, in which case I'll open up to Cabinet. Anybody wish to comment? Councillor Hope.
Thank you very much, Chair. Councillor Ryan Hope, Cabinet Member for Culture, Community Engagement, and something else beginning with C that's gone out of my mind today. I do apologise. Leisure is not in my title, Councillor Lee. So I've got a couple of questions, really. And before I do, I just wanted to say that some of the things I found quite positive in this report was the level of transparency, the review of the strategic adjustments, such as spending an extra £2.8 million on Weymouth Harbor walls, an extra £1 million on the foster care adoptions funds. And I really welcome that level of detail to give us a clear indication on how the council's finances are being spent. I've also got some concerns around the reliance on reserves. And obviously we know as a new administration that we inherited an £8 million gap in the budget that was expected to be made from transformation and transform how the council works to save, the concept of invest to save. And obviously we wasn't handed that plan as an administration, and we're still working to develop that plan, which we'll discuss later on in the agenda. But it does concern me around the amount of resilience at the moment and sort of strain on our reserves, which is why I was quite interested to hear the Cabinet members' statement this evening, and I just made a note of it, so just bear with me 2 seconds. When I believe I heard him saying about robust challenge with our officers at the moment. And it got me sort of thinking here, does that mean he's not happy with the performance of this council or his officers, or does he believe that there is a real need for change within this council?
I think the 151 officer has sort of confirmed that he's under considerable pressure, both with his day job, but with me as well, in terms of where we are with our savings. And it's true that I'm not happy with the way that some decisions and some of our internal workings or processes appear to have operated over the past couple of years. Inquiries are underway and we're trying to establish our position. And I don't want to go into great detail now, but I will commit to a full disclosure in public once we know where we are and what the score is and what we can do. But I'm not happy with the things have been. I think the upper echelon of this authority know that very well. And the pressure will continue to be put on the key players.
Anybody else? Don't see any hands up? No. In which case, does any member of the Cabinet disagree with the recommendations as laid out in the papers? No? Okay, in which case the recommendations are carried. Thank you very much. And we'll go on to item 8, which is Councillor Clifford again, which is the medium-term financial monitoring report, which is 24-25. Over to you.
Councillor Simon Clifford, Cabinet Member for Finance. I'll keep this very short and sweet. It's a follow-on. The last paper was where we are in a moment of time. This paper is a more forward-looking approach. It again highlights the same pressures and challenges that we'll be facing come what may over the next year or two. The one thing I would add is that is a sort of a guesstimate in there because we don't know what our government's final financial settlement will be, as I said, until almost Christmas time. So this again is the best we can predict and the best that we can forecast, but is not cast in stone, and things will change and are changing constantly, especially as we work through the detail of the autumn budget. But I'm more than happy to take questions on that, and we of course have the team here to support any responses that are needed.
Can you officially propose that, please?
And I got to move the recommendations this time, which I just about remembered to. So the recommendations are in front of you, and again, happy to take any questions.
I believe Councillor Andrews is going to second.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second, Councillor John Andrews, Sherborne East, Cabinet Member for Place Services. I'm happy to second the proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Now I'll open up to the floor. Non-executive members, please. Anybody want to speak? No. It's probably worth pointing out, hopefully this will be the final year of one-year settlements. We're promised 2 or 3 year settlements going forward by April. So okay, might not like what it is, apparently. Hopefully it'll be good news. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor, Cabinet Member for Housing and Health. Can I just ask a quick question about inflation? Because I think, I can't find where I made a note of it. I think you've got inflation in at 2% at the moment, but I was reading an article from the Office of National, I can't think what it is, who was saying that inflation could well be higher than that next year as a result of the recent budget. I don't know whether you'd like to comment on that, because 2% may not be the final figure.
Yeah, I think it's a good demonstration of the fluidity of the moment that tomorrow we find out inflation figures. And as I said in my opening remarks, it's not just inflation that comes to bite us, but the consequences that come from inflation. So pay claims throughout our supply chain will eventually be passed to us in one way or another. So we look with great interest at these interesting figures and national positions, and it's quite frustrating how little we're able to influence it and change it ourselves.
Anybody else wish to comment? No. In which case, does any member of the Cabinet disagree with the recommendations? No. In which case, the recommendations are carried. We move on to agenda item 9, which is me, I believe. It's the draft council plan 24 to 29. I'm not going to read out all the preamble I made earlier. I'll just say that the draft council plan is really important to this council. It guides everything we're going to do over the next 5 years. It'll be underpinned by various strategy documents. some of it is driven, obviously, from our Liberal Democrat manifesto for the May elections. It's been consulted with through the big conversation. It's gone through towns and parish councils, and all feedback has been incorporated. And finally, it went through joint overview committee last week, if I remember rightly. Was it last week? It seems like last week. And the recommendations from that are set out in the appendices and have been incorporated, were applicable into the paper. So I'll just leave it there. So I'll propose it as set out in the paper. And I believe Councillor Robinson, is going to second it for me.
Steve Robinson, Matrawas and Upton Ward, Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care. Got that bit right. Very happy to second this and also express my appreciation to everyone that has contributed to this process that has actually really moved at pace. So it's delightful to get it to this stage at this point.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. I'll open up to the floor. Councillor O'Leary.
Yes, thank you very much. I used the last opportunity to talk about the part on economic development. I want to move on to the area around climate change and nature. Under the section where it says 80% of our urban verges will be managed to enhance their value for nature by 2030, can the leader tell me what this will mean in real terms for my ward, bearing in mind I have hundreds of complaints every year already about overgrown and unkept verges in my ward?
I can't give you the exact schedule for your ward because I don't have that detail in front of me. I can ask the officers to send it to you. You will be aware that our verge management has won national awards. It's recognised nationally as good management, and we don't intend to change it. So I will get you to the schedule for your ward in terms of cuts, but that's the answer. Thank you. You may.
Yeah, you say you don't intend to change it, but it says on here you intend to take it from 50% managed for nature to 80% managed for nature. So obviously there will be a change if the plan is carried out. What I'm concerned is I don't want downtown Weymouth or Weymouth in general to end up looking like sort of what Brighton does, where we just sort of leave everything to grow as it was and to return it to nature, because at the end of the day, we do live in a civilised modern society, and you know, it's rather ugly sometimes.
Thank you. Brighton actually changed their policy, so the Triffids you saw in the papers don't exist anymore. We are looking, for example, to look at glyphosate management plans and run some trials in an area not to be announced yet, just to inform the public of how glyphosate will work. But we are looking to manage our verges, and so we will look to change things if necessary. I don't think in reality that will mean your verges in Littlemore get cut less. It just means other priorities on roads elsewhere will get changed. But I will get you the schedule. Councillor Gibson.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Councillor Simon Gibson, representing Verwood. At the overview committee, I spoke about two topics mostly. One was the economic development proposals in the plan. When I spoke about that, I warmly welcomed the proposals, and I still do. One of the changes that I asked for was a change in tourism, better reflecting higher spend, higher value added, rather than simply increasing the numbers of tourists arriving in Dorset. And I just wanted to say thank you for the change in the report. I'm glad that it was taken on board. I think it's a small change, but I do think it makes a difference, bringing more value into Dorset rather than simply more pressure, especially in the summer months. So it was to say thank you very much. The other point that I made was about what wasn't in the report. It was, in particular, I mentioned highways. I said that I felt that for me and for a lot of the residents that I represent, it felt like an omission from the report. Now, I see it captured in the general recommendations from the overview, but I can't see any changes specifically in the report that Cabinet's considering tonight. So it's just to check that I haven't missed it, because whilst it wasn't reflected massively in the big conversation, I was pointed to and therefore have looked at the resident survey that's been undertaken over the last administration, and the number one and number two priorities consistently every year of that survey was picking up the bins and making sure our roads were in a good and safe condition. That's all right. I think that's good data that would be wise to take heed of. And it just feels to me that as we go through this again, both of those issues are still, whilst acknowledged as services we provide, they're not really in the report as something that we can give reassurance to our residents, or that we understand that they are the key issues that they've told us matter to them most.
Yeah, I take that on board. It is a service, I suppose. So the report is basically around our 4 main priorities, and ongoing services is a given, essentially. I don't know if Councillor Andrews wants to comment.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor John Andrews, Sherborne East. Yes, thank you very much, Simon. Sorry, Councillor Gibson. Our highways will continue to be managed in the excellent way they are at the moment. You've only got to ask everybody that comes into the county about our roads, and they're very good. And I think our highways do a fantastic job. Money is tight, as everybody knows. The revenue budget for highways, which is practical maintenance on the highways, is not limitless. In fact, this year we're spending 275,000 on reactive maintenance. I'd like that to be cyclic, but money is tight and we haven't got the revenue budgets. However, we are lobbying government to ensure that when we get a capital requirement, we also get a revenue requirement as well. Whether that's going to be successful or not, I don't know. But we've just seen in the BSIP programme that's just been announced, the 3.2 million, is it? Or something like that. That some of that is actually revenue spend for a change. So we're very pleased about that. But hopefully the message is getting out.
Thank you very much. I do agree about the good work we do on highways. I think it's something we should be very proud of. And it is, to an extent, a service that is business as usual, but a lot of the stuff in the plan is also something that falls roughly into that category. If I was a resident not connected to the council and I was trying to look at what my council stood for and what my council tax was going towards, this would be the sort of document that I'd be looking at in the first instance to get a feel that the council represented the priorities that me and residents had. If I was to look at the plan, there's lots to agree in the plan. I don't struggle to agree with what's in the plan. It's going back to that point about is there things that are missing for it. Accepting not everything can be a priority, but don't you think it's odd that the top 2 things year on year that residents tell us are important are almost entirely absent from the plan?
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know if I suspect we can tweak this because it still is the draft plan. You know, we're not signing off the final thing tonight, as far as I'm aware. So it's full council that signs it off. So I think we can take that forward. And I'm looking at Jennifer Lewis at the back, and I think we can make that a bit more explicit, if that's okay, and highlight the fact that yes, these are the things people really care about. Anybody else in the room? Because I've got some people online. So in which case, I'll go to Councillor Paul Clember.
Thank you, Chair. Paul Clember, Portland Underhill. Thank you, Chair, for putting the document on the agenda tonight. The main question I have is, I've had about 6 people asking me to send the document on, and clearly whether we make full use enough of the, if you like, some of the people that move into Dorset, and some of the people that can best, if you like, at times comment on, especially around the economy. Can you give me assurance that we will push this document out far and wide and urge our constituents to really take part in it? I think my belief is this is an important document, and I think we should be pushing it more. And I just give that guideline that I've had about 6 people asking me for this document. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kimber. I think the reality is it's gone to the point where consultation to the members of the public has gone past. We did consult with Portland Town Council, for example, and hold events over in that neck of the woods. So we will push the document once it's finished, but I think the time for consultation, I'm afraid, is over from individual members of the public.
Okay, Chair, I find that rather sad. there.
And Councillor Kate Weller.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Councillor Kate Weller, Rodwell and White Regis. Weymouth Harbor and marine businesses were shocked and dismayed at how little reference was made to the potential for economic growth from marine and coastal industries within this plan. I suspect that similar responses would be echoed by West Bay and Lyme Regis if this sad lack were brought to their attention. May I ask that an opportunity is given for further conversation before this so-called vision has a line drawn under it?
Thank you, Councillor Weller. I guess the simple answer is we can't put absolutely everything in. It's meant to be a high-level document. There are strategy documents, including economic, that will underpin this. And yeah, the Town Council were consulted, and this wasn't mentioned by the Town Council. And I believe you do sit on the Town Council, so you have the opportunity then as well, of course. It's not going to change that much. I'm looking at Councillor Biggs from an economic point of view. If you want to make a comment.
It's certainly, it is a good point, but it's not something that I've heard raised once, I must admit, being on numerous things about this. But it's certainly something you can consider. But I would imagine it is relatively small in the scale of overall development within Dorset, but it's something obviously mustn't be overlooked. I think you're quite right. Thank you.
May I come back, Chairman?
I was just about to say, I think that's an acknowledgement from Councillor Biggs that we will look to put some sort of reference into the final document before it goes to full council.
May I say I am quite appalled at the idea that you think that coastal industries are relatively minor. They are world-renowned and extremely important, and I did bring it up at the council plan meetings that we had, but they clearly aren't high on the agenda for people who live inland. I'm extremely disappointed, but thank you for allowing me to speak.
Anybody else from non-cabinet members? No. Cabinet members, anyone wish to comment? Don't say anything. No, Councillor Hope.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Councillor Ryan Hope, and I'm the Cabinet Member for Customer, Culture and Community Engagement. Ward Member for Westham in Weymouth. Just wanted to really outline the three positive points here around this document, if I can, Chair. And that is, number one, clear vision. I'm really pleased to see the five key priorities clearly defined as strategic development, really, areas away from that standard business as usual, where we as a council want to enhance, improve over the next 5 years. And of course, those five key priorities are the one we went out with the big conversation, fed back in, endorsed conversations come in. Obviously, I'm pleased as well to see strong alignment with our climate goals, to continue the work that this council has been doing and lead in some ways to go for net zero. And obviously, to get to this point, the stakeholder input from the big conversation, from the towns and parishes, the community and the wider residents of Dorset have had the chance to input into this, to develop it, to help it move forward. And, this is the top level document, as you say, Chair. This isn't the final plan. The strategies, the working groups, everything that comes underneath there will build into this as a top level foundation. The only question I had is, at the moment, and I understand it's still draft, we still seem to be missing some KPIs within the delivery of frameworks, and I'm just wondering when they may be firmed up, and I'm hoping prior to the full council, so that we've got some measurable objectives to track success of this plan over the next 5 years.
Do you have any? Do you want to point out some of the missing KPIs? I'm sure the document will be filled in by the end, but it would help if we knew what they were.
Chair, I can try and dig out the detail here, but from what I can see I'm happy to take this offline and go to Jen or yourself on that. But I'm just key to make sure that the right KPIs are. And just to follow on from those KPIs, given the conversation we've had on the last two items, I think we need to be realistic in the KPIs we set with the financial pressures that we're on. We're under huge financial pressures, and I wouldn't want to set unrealistic targets that we cannot achieve due to the budget constraints we've got. We've got to be realistic in our approach, that we've got a lot of work to do before we can really invest in some of these priorities.
Thank you, Councillor Hope. I agree. As you are well aware, we haven't finalised what we're doing in the budget yet, so they may get finessed and altered as we go forward once we know what the final picture is. Is there anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Robinson.
Steve Robinson, whatever. Yeah, there's a number of the KPIs that are not in there. Is partly because the KPIs will have to be reflected in subsidiary documents. So because we do an awful lot of work in partnership with the NHS, with the private sector, and for housing and adult social care and children and everything, it's very difficult to put specific KPIs against that because they depend on a lot of external factors as well, which is why this is more of an ambitions document rather than a specific plan. With regards to the specificity of the numbers, that was something I didn't want to say, of the numbers, I think there's always a tension between what is we know we can do because it's safe and what our real vision and ambition would be. And sometimes I think it's quite encouraging to be able to put an ambitious vision down in front of people. Even if we don't reach it, at least we've tried. One of the things that I was quite jealous of Children's Services was they put, we want Dorset to be the best place to grow up as a child. That's a massive, massive ambition to have, but it's one I'm really jealous of that I wish I'd have thought for older people, but I don't want to sort of copy their homework. So I think it's quite okay to have targets that we may not actually reach, but we've got that vision for it, and I would hold on to that.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Claire Sutton.
Yeah, I guess I'd confirm that that's precisely what we've done with the three measurable targets within Communities for All, which are particularly associated with Children's Services. You know, we have looked very closely at the numbers, and we have set numbers which we think are achievable, but absolutely no promises. But we're setting the bar as high as we feel is realistic, really.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Simon Clifford.
I'd just like to thank the team who've worked on this. I think this is very hard work, and drawing up visions are extremely difficult documents because you have to take it to such a level it's just one massive compromise more often than not. And I think what Jen and the team have done is come up with something that works. We've got the four priorities of high quality housing, growing economy, communities for all, and the climate and nature crisis. Of course, I'm going to pick grow our economy as the one that I think will be of most benefit to this council and our population. But you can't do that without the other three working hand in hand as well. So for me, although it's an ambition and by nature it's going to be somewhat compromising, I think it's a really good, strong document and something that will help our council workforce focus and know where they're going. And everything that sits under every decision we make, we can reflect through this county plan and our ambition and say we've started to achieve it. So I'm very positive about this.
Thank you, Councillor Clifford. And Councillor Biggs wants to speak.
I forgot to mention we have received a number of quite interesting comments from the LEP on the economic development area. And they came in quite late, so I haven't had a chance and the team to really look at those and analyse them. I think they're really worthy of consideration, so there may be some tweaks in that area. Tweaks. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor, Cabinet Member for Housing and Health. I just wanted to mention about one of the priorities, which is for housing. And I just want to enforce that housing is everybody's problem. We can't have a good economy unless we've got good housing, because where are people going to live to develop our economy? Communities for all, that is also housing. We need good quality housing that supports people right through their lives. Responding to the climate and nature crisis, we can do a lot of that through housing. So I'm really, really pleased that housing is front and centre of this, and I look forward to leading on this work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Anybody else? Or we wrap this one up? So we will look at taking into account Councillor Gibson's and Councillor Weller's comments and incorporating them into the next version of the draft. But does anybody fundamentally disagree with what's laid out in the recommendations? Nope, in which case it's passed. Thank you. So the next agenda item is item 10, which is our Future Council outline business case and draft transformation plan. This is going to be presented by Councillor Ben Wilson, and welcome to the Chamber.
Thank you, Chair. Ben Wilson, South East Purbeck, Cabinet Member for Corporate Development, Transformation, Digital and Change. The report presented to you outlines the progress made in our Future Council Transformation Programme, building on ongoing work that has been happening since 2019 and many successes along the way. It also outlines the next steps that we propose to the Cabinet today. The ambition of the programme is really across three things. Number one, it's to improve services, the experiences and outcomes for all Dorset residents. Number two, deliver value for money through improved council operational efficiency and effectiveness. And number three, and importantly, as we've been hearing this evening, it's to deliver financial resilience and sustainability. The programme places communities, customers and employees at its heart and focuses on the needs of this group. And then also importantly, as we've just been hearing, the transformation is aligned to the new council plan. The programme comes at a time when Dorset Council is facing significant financial pressures and increasing services demands. Despite achieving or being on track to achieve the £34 million of savings outlined in efficiencies for 24-25, we started the year with an £8.6 million budget deficit, and that has grown and will continue to grow if we don't act. So there is a criticality that we get this transformation programme accelerated now. And there's also a criticality that we make this transformation meaningful and for the full council, by which what I mean is we can't do this in pockets. We can't do this in silos across the council. We need to do this as a council as a whole. So the progress we've made to date, which is presented in the report, we've been working with our strategic partner, PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, to accelerate the development of the transformation plan. They have, working with council officers, developed an organisational baseline. They presented options for what our operating model can be for the future, and also some of those transformation initiatives. The projected savings range that they've given us, and verbatim, the partner from PwC said this is a 60% estimate, so take this as it's given, is between an annual saving of 8.7 million and 29.2 million. And we'll all see that's an enormous range. And therefore, what we're now proposing as our going forward is to take that high-level analysis and really take it down into something actionable. So from the next phase of work, really what we need is a transformation vision and an accompanying plan that we can put into action as quickly as possible, and obviously a developed business case, benefits case, that really bottoms out what those savings can be. So we can bake them into the budget for next year, and we can get on with actually delivering them. The plan will be for that next phase of work, that will come back to Cabinet in January, and it will also go to Joint Overview Committee for scrutiny in January as well. The last thing I want to say before opening up for questions is that I think we all recognise as councillors and as officers that launching a large-scale transformation programme can bring uncertainty for the employees of this council. And we go into this by no means lightly. And it's all of our responsibility to make sure that if we choose to go down this road, that the employees are fully supported through this. I have confidence in the people and change work stream that has been set up. This has a focus on employee engagement, employee communication, training, well-being, and regular engagement with the trade unions. And I think we can all see that is going to be a critical component as we move forward in this journey. So I do recommend, I put forward the recommendations as they're laid out in this paper.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I believe Councillor Simon Clifford is going to second this.
Yeah, I'll reserve my right to respond at the end.
Okay, in which case I'll open it to the non-cabinet members. I see there's a hand on the screen. Who's that? See here. Oh, it's Councillor Jill Haynes. Sorry, it just says CH on the screen. There you go, Jill.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Councillor Jill Haynes, Chalks Valleys. And it was a while ago that I was really quite interested in this part of the portfolio. My challenge to this is that 520,000 is a heck of a lot of money. And yet, within this paper, there is no time frame for a return on that money. We're not getting any milestones as to when this should be done. I see that in January there will be some sort of level of business plan of some sort coming forward. But I find it very difficult to support spending more than £500,000 when we're short of money, when it's not telling us what savings that's going to make and within what time frame. And I wondered, I have discussed with the portfolio holder this, but I just wondered if you, leader, had any views on this as well, because this is absolutely vital to keeping this council solvent. And so possibly you could answer how you think we would be moving forward with this.
Councillor Wilson, do you want to answer that? I've got an answer as well, but if you wish to go first.
I'll come back to you. Thank you, Councillor Haynes. I think there are a few areas of that question, and I'll try and answer as best I can. I think the first point, and it is in the report, but again, just so that everyone is clear, the money we're proposing to use for PwC is a specific grant for transformation awarded by the government. So it is a separate pot for this purpose. In terms of your challenge, and I do welcome the challenge on time to benefits, as I call it, when are we actually going to see the return on this? I think that is, we mentioned the January timeline. That's the timeline for when the next phase of work will be finished, and we'll have a very clear view of what that transformation plan is and what the benefits will be over a 4-year time frame. So we will, in January, be able to see that. I think whether you could take comfort from this or not, it is one of my critical focus areas as well. This will be a multi-dimensional transformation plan. It's not monolithic. It's not going to be a big bang. And so there'll be multiple components, and we need to blend those components, and we need to make sure that we are making savings as quick as possible. So my full expectation is there will be some activities in there where we can actually drive savings in the short and medium terms. And yes, there will be some activities in there, a lot of them focused around technology that may be multi-year, and we're not actually going to see near-term benefits. And that my expectation, therefore, when we get to this point in January, is that we can see that blend, but critically, that blend then has to marry up with what we're projecting in our budgets as a deficit, so that we can ensure that our savings are where they need to be and when they need to be. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. You I was just going to mention that the funding is mentioned in the paper, item 5.5. You mentioned it already. Councillor Haynes, do you have anything further to add?
I do have a supplementary, yes. This transformation agenda has been going on for at least 2 years before this administration and has really struggled to get traction. And it's struggled to get traction because there is always something else that needs to be done in the form of staff consultation or some other outside body like Pricewaterhouse to come and advise us. And yet we're not taking advantage of the very good people that we have within the council who are quite capable of making these changes. I have the hugest admiration for the staff that we have, and I'm still really quite surprised that we have wasted a whole year. I remember you yourself laughing at me about my 8.5 million that we might have in transformation savings. We could have had those, but it's stalled for a year. And so I'm very concerned that it could stall for another year. And I really want to know, not now, but when this comes back in January, where those timelines are going to be so that people can be held to account that things are going to happen.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. I'd like to point out it's not actually a year. We only took power in May. It may seem longer for you. I'll pass it to Councillor Wilson if he's going to answer it.
I think just repeat what I said earlier, which is that I welcome the challenge, and I fully expect you to hold me to account for us having those timelines when we come back to this in January. As for the time spent this year, I think there is a bit of an element of going a bit slower so that we can move forward more quickly in the future. We've asked PwC to do this work, and as I stressed before, across the full council, which is obviously quite a large scope that we may have struggled to do with internal resources. It's critical we do that, because some of the decisions that need to be made, and again, where technology is concerned, need to be fully optimized and take into account the full scope of the work that is involved or may be impacted by those. If we make small decisions on a ongoing basis, those decisions risk being inefficient and suboptimal and us not really driving the full benefits out of them. So there is an element by which, by taking the time and looking at the full scope of work, this will put us in a much stronger foundation to move forward with the plans.
Thank you.
Councillor Mercer?
Thank you very much. Councillor Steve Mercer, Blackmore Vale. I'm sure Pricewaterhouse are eminently capable of doing work like this. And you know, £520,000 seems more of an investment to me than a cost, particularly if the government is picking it up. The one, I would make 2 points. One of the things I would be asking them is, where have you done this work before? Not other commercial organisations, but other local authorities, so we can learn from what they've done, so we don't make the mistakes that they made as well. And my other point would be, if you want savings, please look at the brevity of some of the communications we get. This evening's agenda has 778 pages on it. And a plea, if it needs to be a long report or paper, please stick us an executive summary on the front so we can get the gist of it quickly and then investigate parts of it. Particularly Aidan, on your finance thing. Just give us a dashboard of in your reports, the highlights of the figures we need to be looking at. But I would urge you to go and talk to the other organisations that PwC have done this for, so we can see what they've learned. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mercer. On the paper length, I think you expressed the frustration we all feel, and we're trying to make that happen and change. Yeah, 1,000-page documents don't work. So I've got Councillor Jesperson next.
Thank you. Sherry Jesperson, Hillfoots and Upper Tarrants Ward. Mr. Chairman, tidying up last week, as I sometimes do, I came across the document that was the business case for unification, written for us by PricewaterhouseCoopers in 2018. It was salutary reading. The case for unification was this very transformation programme, and the savings that it offered us were very considerable indeed. And it was on the basis of that case that many of us supported unification. We've made some progress, some good progress in the past 5 years on that journey. But in a way, as inevitably, we did some of the low-hanging fruit first, as you would expect, and now the tougher bit is ahead of us. If I have a concern about this programme, it's just to ensure that it is actually ambitious enough, because we're only going to get one chance to do this, and we have to push to the absolute max to get the savings and the transformation and the improved services that we promised to our residents when we took away their much-loved district councils. And so I would like to just say, please can we ensure that we are very, very ambitious if we're going to do this. And on that, as the first stage on ensuring that we are ambitious, can we please make sure that we give time to the Joint Overview Committee to go through this, the next step of this document in the detail and with the information that the Joint Overview Committee needs, because it is the Overview Committee's responsibility to make policy and to make sure that what we then put forward is exactly what our residents would want us to be putting forward. And that's what the Overview Committee is there for. So can I have a plea for ambition and for enough time for the Overview Committee, the Joint Overview Committee, to do its job really, really well? Thank you.
I agree with everything you've said, Councillor Jesperson. I guess it's for the chairs of Overview. So Councillor Erzard's in here already, and Councillor Canning, I believe. And I'm sure they'll give it the time it deserves. And I can assure you we are being ambitious. Just wait and see. Councillor Les Fry is next on my list.
Thank you, Leader. My question is around the staff car parking charges that are being brought in. There's a number of comments in this report.
How does this relate exactly to transformation? Can you? I'll give you a minute to think, but I don't think it's really relevant. Okay. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Chairman. In welcoming Councillor Wilson to his position in Cabinet and with a genuine sincerity wishing him well in his role, I would also, of course, like to pay a tribute to his predecessor, Councillor Holloway, who I know took on the role very earnestly in May and for his own reasons has stood down. But we should acknowledge his contribution during that time. The original case for change to a unitary council, and something that has often stuck with our minds, was the appetite of transformation in respect of devolution to town and parish councils, and also the co-production of our services with our service partners, particularly in areas such as health. Could the new cabinet member give us a sort of taste of his appetite for the scale of those possible changes?
If I may, I will refer that question to the officers.
Thank you. If I could draw your attention to paragraph 1.6 in this report on page 417. So the report describes how the transformation is not seen as simply inward-looking. So at its heart, it's about strengthening our relationships with businesses, residents, and the communities that we serve. So this does link entirely with the wider approach that's indeed drawn up through the council plan that we've discussed earlier about, be that sharing assets, transferring assets into a more local level, that side of devolution. And also the report talks about that we need to develop stronger partnerships. And so the model here that we see later on in our target operating model, it describes how we need our customers, we want our residents to be able to support themselves in their communities as far as possible. And to do that, we as a council need to facilitate communities, work with communities, but also work with partners to ensure that the services are there. So I think this transformation programme is not just about inward-looking how Dorset Council is operating, it's outward-looking about our role in wider Dorset to ensure that our residents get the services that they deserve.
Chair, whilst it's always lovely to hear the wisdom of the Section 151 officer, who I know is widely respected across the nation, as I've met a number of his counterparts and other authorities who always tell me to send my best wishes to him when I next see him. My question was the cabinet member's appetite for this level of devolution and transformation. Does he concur with the report, and are we going to see indeed that genuine blue sky thinking, or does he favour a more restricted approach?
If I may jump in first, and I'll hand over to Councillor Wilson in a second. You may be aware I promised to visit our town councils, all of them. I have started that process. And I was at Stolbridge last week. I'm visiting Gillingham for a different reason tomorrow, but I'm talking with the towns. And one of the things I've had feedback from, and Lyme Regis is another, and Bridport, is the desire to take on things that Dorset Council delivers. These desires, in some cases, certainly in Lyme's case, have been for years. And I'm very open with them that they need to approach us, and we will give them if we can. Councillor Parry will probably be aware that I think resourcing in the assets department over the last 5 years, Dorset Council, has been an issue. We are addressing that. In my view, a lot of the opportunities for Dorset Council to make a difference lie in that area of the council staffing, and so we're trying to support Mr. Britton and his officers and below him by giving him as much support as possible, because we need to devolve things. And if anybody in the room, and this applies to anybody listening online or members, if your parishes, ask your parishes, is there something we're doing that you think you could do better in your parish or your town, tell us. You feed that back to us and we'll try and make it happen. But I'll hand over to Councillor Wilson, who I'm sure is totally on board with the plan.
Councillor Parry, would you mind just repeating the question for clarity? Sorry.
It'll have to be paraphrased because it's not a written down question. But the point being is your appetite as the incoming cabinet member for this role. You will have had your perspective on it, which may differ from your predecessors. Is your appetite for the devolution of powers and responsibilities of Dorset Council to town and parish authorities, okay, and the co-production of our services with our partners such as health? Do you see that as a big ambition, or do you actually see that as more restricted, and what's the capacity of it?
I think we are at the moment behaving in a somewhat ad hoc and pragmatic attitude where it comes to sharing the responsibilities with our town and parish councillors. I accept that I don't yet have a very clear view when it comes to this matter as to what we should be devolving into our town and parish councillors, and that is something that I look to clarify on. What I am clear on in my own mind today is that we live in a world of grey areas. And I think our relationships with our town and parish councillors is today becoming an increasingly grey area. And what I would like to see through this transformation is absolute clarity on what that relationship is. On a personal basis, I believe our parish and our town councillors are the people who are often best equipped to service their residents. And therefore, if there are opportunities to ensure that the clarity and the devolution of those services is down to those bodies, and those bodies are properly empowered to deliver them, then I would welcome that. But I think we need to look at the full scope of work and really understand where those opportunities may or may not exist.
Thank you, Chair. Just one indulgence further. In respect of the forums that we go through engagement, as Dorset Council, we have taken quite a traditional approach of working through the DATPC, and I respect their work. But it has become clear to me in conversations I've had with some parishes that they do not engage through that system. So my sort of plea to Councillor Wilson, and perhaps to Councillor Hope as well under the communities aspect, is that they look to seek further engagement, of course, through DATPC, and work with them to get as broad an engagement with other town and parish councils to improve their satisfaction rate, but also find other routes of engagement to those that will not go down that road.
So we already are doing something like this, and it's in plan, but I'll ask Councillor Hope will give you more detail.
Thank you very much, Leader. Just to reassure Councillor Parry, we are already starting conversations with towns and parish councils around services that they may wish to take over or part fund to enhance in their local areas. That work's been done via the DAPTC and other networks with our towns and parishes, but we are very much of the mind to work with our towns and parishes to ensure the best services for our residents. And we recognise as a group of councils, whether it be town, parish, unitary, that if one of us succeed, we all succeed. If one of us fail, it's the council's fault. It doesn't matter which one. So it's high on our agenda, and it's something we'll continue to work with town and parishes from as we continue to build on those relationships.
And I'll just add to that, we have a paper we've been working on with one of our management graduate trainees. She's done a lot of engagement with other councils, Cornwall and others around the country, to see which best model works. I hate to use the word area board, but that's the sort of thing we're looking at, and we're looking to run a pilot somewhere. I won't say where at the moment, but in Dorset Council's area. Councillor Holloway, I'll go over to you as ex-portfolio holder.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, no, I didn't actually incline to speak on this, but obviously, no, just want to really say, obviously, welcome Councillor Wilson to his new role, and obviously, and I wish him good luck in his new role. I know that we had obviously a lengthy discussions we did on handover and everything, and I think I think he does share a lot of my sort of visions and understanding, and certainly as what some of our councillors have said in the chamber, this is now sort of dealing with the bigger apples, as Councillor Jesperson said, and it is a very important piece of work, and it is extremely vital of what, as Councillor Jill Haynes has said, of keeping this council solvent. So so really, I just want to say, obviously this was obviously my baby. So, obviously I wish Councillor Wilson well. He knows where I am, and obviously just also would like to say thank you for Councillor Parry for your kind remarks. And actually, I've had a lot of very nice, kind remarks from councillors all across the chamber, obviously, once I announced my resignation. So I just want to say I'm deeply grateful to each and every one who have contacted me in person or have sent me kind messages and phone calls as well. So, councillors, I'm deeply grateful for your support that you gave me as the cabinet member, and I hope now that you will endorse and support our new portfolio holder, Councillor Wilson, as I be in the backbenches. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. Councillor Suttle.
Thank you, Gary Suttle, Swanage member. While it's commendable to talk about devolving things to town and parish councils, often they don't have the ability to take these things on. It can be very difficult. But we're getting sidetracked here. The work that we envisaged for our future council may include this, but it's about the processes and the costs within this council. I can give you numerous examples of why our systems don't work, how we don't even know who benefit claimants are, even though we pay them. Our whole process was required an overhaul. And the point of the work of our future council, which we would have commenced, obviously there have been changes and you are going to do things differently than we were going to do them. We acknowledge that. But within the costs that we seek to save are within. They're not transferring a public toilet to whoever parish council. They live in, and I think the portfolio holder was touching on it within the speech that he gave, preamble, when he talked about the need to engage with unions, because the bottom line of this work, and he knows this, is about a reduction in the costs, and that will inevitably mean the number of staff that are employed here. And it's no good getting away from it. You have to face those facts. So what I don't want to, when I listen to this and I hear people saying, well, let's talk about chatting to the parish council, that is not going to save us. Hard decisions, our future council work was always going to be the most difficult piece of work that we had envisaged and wanted to engage with. But it's your job now. I just want you to give us your assurance that you will be tackling the hard core of a problem, not flattening about on the exterior. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Suttle. To sort of reiterate maybe a comment I made in my preamble about this being a whole council transformation, my focus is on what we're transforming, what we deliver, what the outcomes are for this council. Off the back of those outcomes, we need to make savings. We know that. We also know, to Councillor Suttle's point, there will be an impact on people. Now, we need the right people doing the right work with the right skills. And we therefore know that that will bring change. That brings opportunity. That hopefully will bring mobility for our people. But it may also, when we look at how we can transform some of our processes and our technology landscape, it may also lead to a reduction in the size of the staffing and those number of people. Now, as laid out in the report, and this is a critical point, Dorset Council runs at a 10 to 12% annual turnover, and that's a critical fact. And we need to be able to use elements like that, and also where we have open job vacancies that may have been open for a period of time, to manage that people impact, so that the adverse impact on the existing staff at Dorset Council is lessened. But it is an inevitability in any organisation that relies on its people, and its people are its major cost base, that to make those savings and to be fit for the future and to deliver that resilience, that financial resilience, there will be an impact on our people. But I think we owe it to those people to ensure that impact is as lessened as we can, and as well managed as we can, and we will obviously be following all people regulations and in employment law in how we conduct ourselves. And we also want to ensure that we're also giving people opportunities as well as some of those hard facts.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I'll now move on to Cabinet. I don't think nobody on the screen. Anyone on Cabinet want to speak? Councillor Biggs.
Thank you. We've heard some really good comments, and I think, being ambitious is something that does come up a lot. Should we be? Absolutely, we have to be more ambitious, and that may involve us having a higher risk appetite than we've had previously, and making some difficult and challenging decisions. I think we should be under no illusion there'll be things that some of us won't like, but they've decisions that are going to have to be made. And Councillor Suttle's quite right. The amount that can be saved from transferring some of the assets to town parish councils, is probably a drop in the ocean. But I think there's more to be done. I think assets, particularly certainly in income generation, which needs to be maximised, but also assets that we don't need, as has been discussed previously, we shouldn't be holding, and we should explore all those avenues. And likewise, for town and parish councils, there's an appetite of risk for themselves and a willingness to increase their precept if they want to take some of these things on. So it's not we're not going to give them money to run those assets for years on end, that they will be ultimately cost them, although they may be able to run them more efficiently with their local knowledge. But I think the other thing, income generation is something that we should really think about, because that's the other flip side. If you want to avoid some of those really painful decisions, we've got to sweat our assets, literally, in more ways than one, and think of imaginative ways to generate income. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Biggs. Councillor Hope.
Thank you very much, Leader. Councillor Ryan Hope. I just want to picking up on one of the first comments made by the previous Cabinet member, Councillor Jill Haynes, around her concerns on this and the aspiration. And I personally, as someone that sits on the Transformation Working Board, just want to give her some reassurance that this has got our top priority. It's got our top priority because of paper one on the agenda tonight, the budget, and our forecast and our success. We have to transform how this council works. And this new administration will not take our eyes off this transformation project. We will drive it, we'll be challenging our officers, and we will make sure that it succeeds. And I look forward to, if it doesn't, being called in on scrutiny on that exact quote. So just some reassurance. This is top priority. It's got to be. It's got to happen.
Thank you, Councillor Clifford.
So as a seconder, I thought I'd just wrap up some thoughts. And I find myself in a very unusual circumstance of defending the opposition, because they've picked a few holes in themselves that they weren't able to fully deliver, or the scheme was too big. And I would say to them, you shouldn't be too hard on yourselves. You landed unitary. That was your primary role in 2019. The idea of doing unitary and a whole council transformation programme at the same time, it was asking for trouble. So I think that with the hand of friendship, I think we're all on the same side here. We understand a whole-scale, whole council transformation scheme is very hard to deliver, and it will need everyone pulling together to enable that to happen. And I'm just as a sign of how bizarre life has become, I'm going to be asking the Cabinet member, do not focus solely on the money, because we have to transform this council to be the best council we can be. And that's going to involve, the one thing I think you didn't say was get the right people with the right skills, doing the right work with the right tools. And I think that's the key as we get through phases 1, 2, and how many phases there will be. So I think this is a really big project. I think it feels like there's whole council support for it. And I think it's a really big ask for our officers to make this work and deliver. And of course, I want as much money coming out of it as possible, but the right money in the right way at the right time.
Thank you for wrapping up, Councillor Clifford. Is there anybody on the Cabinet who disagrees with the recommendations set out? No. In which case, the recommendations are carried. We go on to the next agenda item. Probably going to be slightly shorter, this one, I suspect. This is item 12, which is, so just for reference, we're skipping item 11, as I mentioned at the beginning. Item 12, Private Sector Housing Assistance Policy. It's Councillor Jill Taylor who's presenting it.
Thank you, Councillor Jill Taylor, Cabinet Member for Housing and Health. And I'd just like to introduce this paper fairly quickly because we've already had quite a long meeting. Cabinet is being asked tonight to approve the private sector housing assistance policy contained within Appendix 1 of this report. The policy sets out the financial assistance Dorset Council offers to eligible residents to improve or adapt their property. The policy supports people to live independently in their homes or to move on to more suitable accommodation. It also helps people with pre-existing health conditions access nationally available grants to reduce carbon emissions. The policy was originally approved by Dorset Council in November of 2020. The reason that Cabinet is being asked to consider this policy again is because there are now several additional inclusions, which I would like to highlight. There are 3 which are really important. The first one is that there is a top-up grant raising the maximum disabled facilities grant to £45,000. I think previously that was set at £30,000. With inflation and the way the world is going, that was simply not enough. There is now a move-on grant to help disabled people move to more suitable housing. That was something that was missing from the last one because people move and people should be allowed to move. So it is now possible to access a grant as part of the move-in. And an energy improvement grant helping disabled people improve their heating and insulation. The changes are set out in the table shown in Appendix 2 of the report and in more detail in the policy itself. Importantly, considering what we've been talking about quite a lot this evening, this policy does not add to the Council's revenue budgets, as funds are received in the form of grants. Loans are financed from an existing capital. This policy has been to People and Health Overview Committee, or it may have gone to scrutiny, I do apologise, where this paper was supported. I therefore move that the 2 recommendations within that report and would ask for a seconder, please.
I believe Councillor Robinson is seconding.
Steve Robinson, Adult Social Care. Isn't it great to have a policy about people, about helping people, and as Councillor Taylor mentioned earlier, about addressing housing and giving good quality housing to people? So I'm delighted to second this.
Any non-Cabinet members wishes to speak? Don't see hands up on the screen or in the room. Any Cabinet members wishing to comment? Nope. Any Cabinet members disagree with the proposals and recommendations? Nope. Okay, in which case the recommendation is carried. I told you it was a quick one. The next item is agenda item 13, which is a draft contaminated land strategy, and that's also Councillor Taylor's paper.
Thank you, Leader. The Council is required to have a contaminated land strategy based on national policy. The purpose of the strategy is to protect human health and the environment from risks associated with previous uses of land. For example, where the previous use has caused the land to be polluted. Whilst Dorset Council does not have a particularly industrialised past, there are many locations where manufacturing processes have taken place and land needs to be checked and remediated before further use. The local government reorganisation in 2019, since the local government reorganisation in 2019, the council has performed its duty under the predecessor council's strategies. This report recommends a new Dorset Council strategy based on the previous strategies and national best practice, and I recommend this strategy to you for approval.
I believe Councillor Andrews is seconding.
Thank you very much, Chair. I would like to second the recommendations as set out in the paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Anybody wish to comment on non-Cabinet members? Nope. No hands. Cabinet members, any comments, observations? Nope. In which case, does anybody disagree with the recommendations? Nope. Okay. In which case, recommendations are carried. The next item is Dorset SACO, Common Agreed Syllabus, and Councillor Claire Sutton.
Thank you, Chair. Rob White Ward, Cabinet Member for Children's Services, Education and Skills. I'm not going to say very much about this because it's already been through People and Health Overview and you've all read it. Just very briefly, we have a legal duty to provide a syllabus for RE, and after events of the summer and ongoing world events, SACRA have worked hard to ensure this syllabus has tolerance, inclusion and community cohesion at its core. We've received some really helpful comments actually from Councillor Bown and Councillor Atwell who teach RE, so that's been incredibly helpful. In response to those, if Cabinet approves the paper in principle, what we want to do is, we don't need to formally agree this here and now, but just to advise you, we'll share a final design with a small working group, which they've both kindly agreed to be part of, and we'll provide summaries for each of the sections prior to publication, so that will address some of their practical concerns. So I'd like to recommend this, to propose this, but before doing so, I just wanted to hand over to Amanda, who wanted to make a couple of comments on some of the observations that Councillor Atwell made.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton. Amanda Davis, Corporate Director of Education and Learning. So Councillor Atwell raised the issue of the Abrahamic traditions, which are shown on page 11. So Christianity, and was sort of sharing a concern that Christianity was a choice, but actually it's one of the essential options. It has a major focus in the paper. So we'll make sure that's underlined in the final version.
Thank you. Seconder is, when we're on the list, so this is Steve again, Councillor Robinson.
Yes, it's people policy, so I'm all for seconding this.
Thank you. Anybody wish to comment? Non-Cabinet members? Nope. Any Cabinet members wish to comment? Or can we take us right? Okay, in which case, is there anybody who disagrees with the recommendations and take into account Councillor Sutton's comments about the small amendments which are going to be made? Is everybody happy with that? I don't see any disagreement, in which case, okay, fine. That's carried. Agenda item, put my glasses on so I can see what I'm doing. Agenda item 15, this is designing out severe hardship and improving social mobility in Dorset. That's also Councillor Sutton's paper.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm not going to summarise the report again. You've all read it, but this is one of those exciting ones, isn't it? You know, well, I hope other people feel like that. Having said that, it really is fair to say that progress on this has been really quite disappointing to date. I mean, just running through a few dates. In 2016, I got a motion on social mobility passed by Dorset County Council, but nothing much happened. Then 2 years later, Dorset, South Dorset was deemed the worst of all 533 constituencies in England for social mobility. And then a year after that, 2019, we passed a motion proposed by Councillor Pete Barrow, and some actions in that, I mean, credit to Children's Services, especially in relation to children's early years are in train. But the Stronger Neighbourhood project, where many of the actions lay, it seems, according to the report, it just ground to a halt in 2022, which sounds a bit inexcusable to me. But leaving that aside, in the same year, in 2022, that's when the Forgotten Towns report by Philip Marfley and Jenny Lennon-Woods charted the decline of Weymouth and Portland over decades. And just to, if you'll indulge me, that actually felt quite personal to me, because I grew up in Weymouth, in two of the 7 neighbourhoods that are, you know, in the bottom 20% nationally for income deprivation. And I left Weymouth when I was 20, then returned when I was 40 to bring up the kids. And as soon as the kids reached 18, they were straight out of here. So, you know, I've seen this through my own play out in my own personal experience. Again, trying to keep it brief, we all know, and I hope care about the issues addressed in this paper. I don't think we need to repeat that. You know, it's kind of a given. But given the lack of progress over the last 8 years, what's going to be different this time? And that's been my challenge to the officers, who've been absolutely fantastic in persuading me, yes, we can do it, Claire. It's great. So we know this is difficult, and progress can only really be measured over decades, but obviously it goes without saying we have to try. So let's make a fresh start across all our portfolios and with partners across Dorset to turn what I think is a really excellent report into reality. So I'd like to move the recommendation. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton. I think Councillor Robinson second in this one.
People policy. Absolutely. I also note that this is a cross-departmental process which Councillor Sutton is going to lead on, and I have every confidence, having just heard her speak now, of her passion and confidence in delivering it.
Councillor O'Leary?
Yes, I'm very pleased to hear Councillor Sutton speak on this matter. Like her, I grew up in Weymouth. I never did a runner. I could never find my way out. Our MP did. But however, what Councillor Robinson said is completely true. This is cross-departmental. It is about education. It's about jobs. It's about housing. If you don't have the housing, you don't have the place for people to live there with the jobs. And we got to stop the drain of people leaving Dorset and then coming back later on, when perhaps sometimes they're a bit less economically productive. And that is a major, major issue in this administration. We may not be in the same agreement, but we do have, I will do everything I can to work proactively with the administration on this matter.
Thank you, Councillor O'Leary. Councillor Northam, I believe, on the screen.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I have sent an email to Councillor Sutton and Sarah Crabb, just pointing out that there aren't 7 areas. There are 11 LSOAs, brackets neighbourhoods in Dorset in the bottom 20% in that index of multiple deprivation, and 10 of those areas are in the former Weymouth and Portland Borough Council. This is wrongly stated in para 1.3. I did point this out when we reviewed this earlier, and I really like it changed, because when we're applying for funding to help us, getting these numbers right is really important. By the way, the changes which have been made to the plan apart from that, I really approve, and thank you for listening. But I'm hoping you can make that change. Thank you.
Councillor Sutton.
Yeah, thank you. I absolutely respect Councillor Northern's, attention to detail, and also his passion about this. And I have seen the email, but the distinction here is what the report points to is income deprivation, and what Councillor Northam's referring to is multiple deprivation. My personal feeling is we don't really need to make fundamental changes, because we know that we know the numbers. I don't think that's going to make a big difference in terms of seeking outside resources, because what we do know is we've got to get on with it. Really, actually changing the indices that we use isn't going to make much difference in relation to what we actually have to crack on with. But if others across the chamber feel differently, then I don't mind going with that. That's fine.
Okay, Councillor Hobbs-Gell.
Thank you. Councillor Hobbs-Gell for Fendown South Ward. I'm really glad to see the report. It's really nice, and I'm really glad to see in there particularly a positive thing about reducing barriers for the voluntary and community sector to get involved. I think there's a great wealth of opportunity there, and it's really nice to see it and to see those barriers having been recognised. So great work. In terms of the kind of the reporting, I'm going to go back again to the indices of multiple deprivation, and I know this is more about income, but in those indices of multiple deprivation haven't been updated. The programme by national government was started in terms of looking at all those stats, but they're well behind now. We haven't had an update, and actually that is potentially a holdback because we're kind of not knowing where we are. So are we as a council, can we kind of go back to national government and say, look, when are these updates coming? Because our policies are based on what stats we have. And within that is income, but and you can break down those indices of multiple deprivation into several different sectors, obviously, whether it's young people, old people, whatever. But if that's not, feedback isn't coming from national government, can we give a push on that?
Yeah, thank you very much, Hannah. I'm going to pass the second part of the question over to my learned officers over here, but the first part on the voluntary sector, I mean, this is a tricky one for me because I've worked on and off in the voluntary sector for many a year, and we always say the same things, don't we? We always say about simplifying process and making it easier, and those of us that work in that sector know perfectly well. I mean, I know, for example, my community group in Chapley, give me £100, what I can deliver with that is astonishing compared to what Dorset Council could deliver with that, frankly. But I'd say that the officers behind me are really, really passionate about this. So I'm just kind of hoping and praying, obviously with Councillor Hope closely involved, that we really, really, really can make a difference this time. But on the detailed numbers, over to the ladies back there.
Really, there's an opportunity for us here. Sorry, Alice Deacon, Corporate Director for Commissioning and Partnerships. There's a real opportunity here to, yes, we need to seek national information, but we have good data, good local data in Dorset that we'll be able to utilise. And you'll see in the introduction to the report, there's also been conversations that myself and Sarah Crabb have held with our Integrated Care Board and Integrated Care Partnership around how we do this collectively across. So the data sharing between us is vital as well in terms of being able to mobilise as a partnership across directorate, but also beyond. So national, yes, but also real opportunity here for you to use what we've already got and what we know and drive that through the programme of work. And that's absolutely what we intend to do collectively.
Thank you for that answer. Is that data going to be available in terms of, so for instance, the indices of multiple deprivation and all of those breakdowns are available to everybody to see? And we kind of, a voluntary sector, know where to go to get those data if you're seeking funds other than for Dorset Council. And actually that's going to be really important if we're going to move this policy forward and move the outcomes forward. So I'm kind of, can we get access to that? Can we allow the voluntary sector to have access to this data and point it forward? And if not, then we kind of we're going back to that. Can we push again at national government? Because
yeah, it's related. I'm not sure if it directly answers, in which case the officers might be able to help. But I'm thinking about, obviously you're talking about the numbers in the way that Councillor Northern was talking about the numbers. I really don't think we need to go through the sort of procedure of changing, amending the wording of the recommendation. But obviously, we do need those numbers to work from. That's for sure, and the team's absolutely aware of that. I don't know if that really helps, actually.
If I can come in again, I think what we can do, myself and Sarah can think about the opportunity and the spaces we can create that bring voluntary sector colleagues in, representation into the space where we can proactively share and we can plan together. That's absolutely what this paper's been built on, and a key partner in this is the voluntary and community sector. So let's think about the spaces and places we can share information well.
Councillor Northam, I apologise I didn't come back to you. I still got your hand up. Do you wish to speak still?
Yes, please. I have looked at these numbers, and thank you, Claire, for recognising that. I just feel that the index of multiple deprivation has 5 factors, and income is only one of the 5 factors. The others are health, education, barriers to housing, and there's a 5th one I can't remember. But that's what we're talking about in this social deprivation whole agenda item, and I really think it's important to get it right. And I'm frustrated that, having made the point previously, it wasn't followed through. So that's me being a bit particular. But I would hope that we could reflect, when levelling up funding was obtainable, one of the measures was the index of multiple deprivation. That wasn't focused on income deprivation, it was the general index. It's a commonly used factor, and I think we should stick to it, because, as has been said, it's the most recent national data that gives us national comparisons. Melcombe Regis is in the bottom 3%, Melcombe Regis town centre is in the bottom 3% nationally. That is dreadful. People just don't think of Weymouth as being at that level of deprivation, but it really is. And that's why I don't want it to get lost. So I would like that to be reconsidered. So that was my response. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just very quickly, I absolutely hear you, David, and I do agree with you, and the report authors agree with you, but I don't think we actually have to change the wording in a report to make that meaningful, really.
Councillor Borden.
Thank you, Chair. Belinda Borden, Lyme Regis and Charmouth. I am just concerned that there doesn't, I'm not disagreeing with anything, but I know that there's a lot of hidden deprivation, which the figures, because it averages out. So, for example, in my patch, we've got 40% of people over 65, which is even higher than Dorset's average. We've got a lot of people living on their own, but it's masked because we've also got a lot of wealthy people, so the averages don't look severe. I'm particularly concerned, 2.217 does make reference to transport, but I don't think enough is being made of transport. I think it's absolutely vital. And whenever I whinge about this, people in the room say, well, you're lucky, at least you have some buses. If we cannot get a decent, well-connected public transport system, you're automatically excluding the, let's say, I think it's 35% of people in my patch that don't have a car. And those of us that do, daren't give it up because we can't do what we need to do. I couldn't come to meetings, for example. I really think we need to, and I know a lot of it isn't within the council's gift. Maybe more of it will be, as the government is talking about allowing local authorities to organise their own bus services. But I think we've really, really got to prioritise well-connected bus systems that link to the train services. That means looking outside the county and doing a really big piece of work on that. I'd love to get involved. I don't want to start reinventing the wheels. I don't have the skills to do so, but I really think this should be part of this. Thank you.
Yeah, very quickly. I couldn't agree more about public transport, and Nick and I have had this conversation, and obviously a paper ain't going to solve it. Cross-directorate working ain't going to solve it, but we know that we have to do our very best. That's all I can say at this stage. I mean, give us a big cash injection, and we'll put on buses everywhere, won't we? But well, I would ask John respectfully if he would put on buses everywhere. But I hear you. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton. The money, I would say, Officer Matthew Piles got yesterday is being spent already, I suspect. Who's next? There's Councillor Christopher.
Councillor Simon Christopher, Dorset Councillor Marshwood Vale. My near neighbour, Councillor Borden, made some very valid points there. And I do think this council would benefit from actually hearing from other councillors in other counties. And I have specifically in mind Andrea Davis, who's in charge of the transport portfolio for Devon, who has achieved some remarkable wins in terms of public transport and new railway stations, etc. And I don't think we should necessarily be despondent about improving the areas such as Weymouth and bringing in new firms, etc. I've had good calls, as many of us have, this side of the House, to spend time in South Somerset. And I noticed that the Audemars Coney factory is still there in Temple Combe, despite the terrible roads of South Somerset. And I think we need to really bear in mind the importance of employment. We need to be talking about employment more, arguably, than our relationships with other town and parish councils, because that is where, arguably, the great benefits are going to stem from. And I do think, as I look across the House, the chamber today, that perhaps the other parties are somewhat glum at the moment, and they're probably glum because of all the negative news. But we must be positive. I noted the other day that Bob Dylan was back in Bournemouth, and I do think the times are changing, where people now realise the great mistakes they may have made by not voting Conservative. I could go on about the farming matters that might be pertinent at the moment, but I think I'll leave it there.
I'm not sure there was a question there, Councillor Christopher, that needs answering. Oh, Councillor Sutton thinks there is. Okay.
Yeah, just very quickly, I'm very glad to hear there's another Bob Dylan fan in the room. I'm personally not feeling glum whatsoever. I'm excited about this paper. But as soon as you started speaking, Alice was nodding at me. You know, when you mentioned a contact in Devon, and I can just assure you they'll be straight on it. You know, they will.
Councillor Christopher again.
In the context of the world of reality, we see Great Depression in terms of retailing, and we see a ridiculous situation where people can earn just over £1,000 a month and pay tax, and employers, if they pay more than £500, have to pay employers' national insurance. So I think we do need to concentrate on the economic reality. Even PricewaterhouseCoopers and the other Big Four accountants are actually laying people off in 2024. And when I talk about the importance of talking to other councillors, such as Andrea Davis, I do recall that the previous Conservative administration from 2019 to 2024 had 2 Cornish councillors come and address Dorset Council, and perhaps...
Councillor Christopher, do you have a question? No. Councillor Perry?
Thank you, Chair. I shall try and be a little less partisan. Reflecting on educational attainment myself, I was so successful at Hardy School in Dorchester that after I left, they not only closed the school down, they pulled it down to make sure nobody else went there. But the one thing that my family did invest in, and I was ever grateful for, was the opportunity to acquire a driving licence. And that has proven time and again to be my passport to employment. And I know that there is pressure from some sides to be a conversation purely about the use of public transport. But there is a huge opportunity in the world of private transport if you can acquire a driving license and you can serve in many ways. Two regrets: I didn't go on to get an HGV license, and my parents didn't encourage me to become a train driver, because judging by pay settlements, that would have been a very good place for me to be. But what I did want to flag up to you is a genuine concern that I have around social mobility. When I look at some of our electoral wards, we talk about hidden deprivations, and it's very easy to see that in some of our electoral wards, we have the wealthiest areas and some of the areas of greatest deprivation sat inside the same ward. And if you take an average, you think all is well, and actually it isn't. So an appeal for those of us who are beyond a DT1 to DT5 postcode: please look at what's required in BH and SP postcodes and DT10s, etc., because some of those rural areas are very isolated, and they're isolated in areas such as IT and communications. And if you haven't got a good phone signal and you haven't got good internet and you haven't got a driving license and everything else, suddenly that opportunity to move out of deprivation and increase your social mobility becomes ever harder. So a reassurance, please, that those will not be overlooked. I do appreciate the concerns of Councillor Northam and others regarding their own patch, but we are Dorset Council, not Weymouth Council.
Absolutely hear you, Councillor Parry. Yeah.
Yeah, you make good points, Councillor Parry. Anybody else wants to speak? I don't see anyone online. Any Cabinet members wish to speak? Councillor Biggs.
Yeah, I think so many things in here touch on economic prosperity as well. They're very much interlinked. You know, grow the economy and you'll reduce poverty. It's a simple fact, isn't it? I think everyone agrees on that. It's just how you do it and how you make that an inclusive growth. That's the challenge. Are we glum? I don't think we're glum. This afternoon I was in the Innovation Park with Bovington children, and it was fantastic to see them doing STEM works with the MOD and Atlas, and our digital colleagues did a fantastic job and really involving them about becoming potentially entrepreneurs, you know, getting into coding and all that sort of thing, and getting them interested in science, and not just doing some of the jobs that are all very important jobs, but these are the growth jobs that we need and do. And interestingly, when I asked them what does Dorset Council do, the first response was they make rules. And I think we should make opportunities. I think that's really what we've got to do. If that's the impression that we just make rules, then we're perhaps missing the point, and that's why we haven't got social mobility. So I think we've got a lot of work to do, but it is very much captured within our corporate plan to do those sort of things, but it's not an easy job, is it? Thank you.
Anybody else wish to comment? No. So can we agree on the recommendations, but you are going to look at changing the numbers, or you're not going to change the numbers? Yeah.
I think it makes any material difference, but we absolutely take that on board, and we will use them, and they will inform the work.
So any disagreement with the recommendations as laid out? No, in which case we'll move ahead. It's carried. So the next agenda item is the last one in the non-exempt section. And this is item 16, which is Weymouth Harbor Future Development and Open Port Duty Report. It's Councillor Andrews.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is the introduction to the Weymouth HRO, Harbour Revision Order. This report provides an update of the progression of Weymouth Harbour's future development, with a particular focus on the proposed modification of the harbour's open port duty. Historically, the open port duty required Weymouth Harbour to remain accessible to all vessels, regardless of size, to support the shipping and non-shipping of goods and the embarkation and disembarkation of passengers. While this obligation was critical when the harbour served as a hub for large-scale ferry services, these activities ceased in 2015, and so no viable proposals have since emerged to reinstate them. Consequently, the unrestricted open port duty has become an increasingly impractical and misaligned with the current and future needs of the harbour. The proposal to amend the open port duty involves applying for a harbour revision order to limit the harbour's obligations to vessels below a specific size. This adjustment will facilitate the redevelopment of the peninsula area and support the delivery of key generation projects through the government-funded Levelling Up Fund. These projects aim to transform Weymouth Harbor into a vibrant hub for leisure, tourism and small-scale commercial activity, reflecting the modern maritime trends and local economic priorities. By enabling the removal of the outdated infrastructure, such as the redundant ferry link span ramp, and by creating space for new facilities and businesses, the proposed changes will unlock significant commercial and development opportunities. This shift would also help secure the long-term financial sustainability of Weymouth Harbor, ensuring it continues to play a vital role in the region's economic growth while meeting its statutory obligations as a harbour authority. Chair, I have with me this evening our Ed Carter, who's the Dorset Council Harbours Manager and Weymouth Harbour Master. Ed was responsible for the report, and I'd like to thank him, and I'd also like to thank the advisory committee, the Harbour Advisory Committee, for supporting Ed in bringing this report forward. So I would like to recommend the recommendations that are before you in the paper this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. I believe Councillor Clifford's going to second.
Again, I'll reserve my right to speak at the end, should there be any.
Councillor Andrews, you want to say something? Councillor Leary, I had you down as first on my list before you even put your hand up. There you go.
Well, if you ever get thrown out as lead, you can always become a sidekick. It's just a question around attitude. This is obviously quite a big change to Weymouth Harbour, and I understand that harbours have to change. But can I just get assurance from the Cabinet member that he does agree with me that the first primary purpose of Weymouth Harbour is not as a hotel, floating hotel for gin palaces, but it is in fact a working commercial harbour and will always remain that way?
I can assure you of that, and consequently, as you've noticed, we have some new refrigeration in the harbour. Is it working yet, Ed? Almost there. We've had a bit of a problem with Southern Electricity, or whatever they're called these days, connecting us. But no, it will remain a working harbour. I'm quite sure of that.
Councillor O'Leary, is that okay? Do you want to say anything else? Councillor Gibson?
Thank you very much, Councillor Simon Gibson, representing Verwood. Might seem strange talking about Weymouth Harbour from Verwood, but it goes back to when I had the honour of doing the levelling up work on behalf of the previous administration. One of the real difficulties with trying to make sure that we got the plans right for levelling up was making sure that there was a fair balance between the harbour and the ambitions that we set out when securing tens of millions of pounds to invest in the future of Weymouth, because we recognised that it was both things. It was to be transformative to the areas that we owned, including the peninsula site, but also it was a working harbour. I felt that that balance was fairly struck. I still think it's fairly struck, but it can't be achieved without a revision and a harbour revision order to reduce the open port duties. So for me, if you want to level up, you have to do this piece of work. It's timely, so we need to get on with it. The longer you leave this, the harder it is to do your regeneration work. So for me, this is an absolute no-brainer. The thing that I want to mention is it's very, very sensible, recommendation B, to allow the specific wording to be delegated, because as this goes through a legal process, it will change. But I think the thing we need to send it off with is cross-party support to get on with it.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson, for your support. Councillor Hughes?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to say something as the Harbours Advisory Chairman. Not to say thank you to Ed for all the hard work that he's done over the last few months. I know it's been a big effort, and it started a lot even before Ed came on board. And all the work that's gone into bringing this paper tonight was a big effort, and I thank him. And I would like to thank you all, because I know you're all going to vote for it, please. Thank you.
Councillor Andrews, do you wish to come back?
Yeah, I'd just like to come back on that, because people will be wondering what kind of timescales we are. So I'm going to hand over to Ed, because he's been here all night, being very patient, waited till the last thing, and I haven't said the word. And that's the quietest I've ever known Ed, because he's very vocal in what he believes in, which is brilliant. He's so enthusiastic and does a really great job in our harbours. So, Ed, if you'd like to tell us what timescales are involved in the Marine Association, I'll be much appreciated.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Andrews. Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, members. Ed Carter, Dorset Council Harbours Manager and Weymouth Harbour Master. The process for following a harbour order is necessitated by a few key processes, the first of which we've gone through this evening to discuss things with the Harbours Consultative Group and the Harbours Advisory Committee. The next stage following this, hopefully approval this evening, will be to go to public consultation, which of course is carried out through the Marine Management Organisation with the members of the public and other bodies, statutory consultees, able to feed back into that process. Once that is completed, there has recently, over the past few years, been a bit of a delay with the passing of harbour revision orders. We're hearing through legal channels within harbours that things are freeing up and there are signs of change coming forward. We're hoping very much to see the harbour revision order for Bridport and Lyme Regis coming through early next year, for example. So we're hoping, as we're putting this together, we were being told potentially 3 to 4 years. We're now being told that we could be down to even 1 to 2 years to get this through and get it signed off in front of Parliament, which is sounding very promising indeed. And of course, as we know, is of course very timely as well for the potential developments being put forward for Weymouth Peninsula as well. So yeah, we're working hard to keep things moving as quickly as we can. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're going to go to Councillor Weller. So my psychic skills aren't as great as Councillor Leary, because Councillor Weller was second on my list, and now she's the last one. Kate Weller.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, thank you. Communication. First time this was this particular iteration was brought up. The iteration of the HRO was brought up with the harbour users. It was misunderstood and caused alarm. I know the harbour master took that on board, and I know that he's addressed that. I just want to emphasise that the people of Weymouth will be very concerned about the thought that no large ships will ever come into Weymouth again, and it needs to be very carefully communicated that that's not the purpose of this HRO. It does not mean that Waverley and similar things will no longer be able to come into Weymouth. That's hugely important for all the residents of Weymouth, and I can only stress that really, really highly. I have every confidence that Ed will now take that on board and deal with it. But it is interesting that this particular item is acknowledging the commercial elements of marine and coastal industry and business within the county, but apparently I'd like to say it seems like only minutes ago, but I think it was probably 2 hours ago. It was of little significance. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. And I would echo Councillor Weller's comments there. Thank you. There was some concern raised by the Harbour Consultative Group on this restriction of open port duty to vessels no more than 24 metres in length. It's absolutely true that larger vessels still can and will visit Weymouth Harbour in future. By restricting the open port duty to 24 metres, it gives us control over our own destiny in as much as we can decide whether or not those vessels that are visiting Weymouth are beneficial in the short term or the long term, as we see, rather than potentially being forced down a line where we could be legally bound to invest a very large amount of money into complex infrastructure that may not be the direction of travel that we wish to go in. Like I say, we're more at liberty to choose our own destiny, and I look forward to welcoming vessels like the Waverley and tall ships and any other opportunities that raise their heads. I will duly consider in future, of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Hopefully the Echo will report that accurately from tonight's conversations. Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Clifford?
Just a very quick one for me, which is support everything in here. I would just emphasise that can we, John, through your cabinet offices, make sure that every scheme that's going to be connected to these huge developments that we have in potential around the Weymouth area, that we consult significantly with Weymouth Town Council, and do not forget Chickerell Town Council, as much of the traffic will be coming through there as well.
I think we're done with this one. Yeah. Anybody disagree with the recommendations? No, in which case it's carried. Thank you. And I think we're now going into, well, there are no urgent items. Urgent items? There aren't any. So the next bit is exempt business. There aren't any members of the public, but I do have to read the preamble, don't I? Okay. So I'll just read this out. That in accordance with section 100A, brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, to exclude the public from the meeting for the business specified by the items below. There are items, there's 3 of them, because it's likely that if members of the public were present, then there would be disclosure to them of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 3, Part 1 of Schedule 12A to the Act, and the public interest in withholding the information outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information to the public. So can I have a proposer for that, please, Cabinet? Councillor Robertson, Councillor Sutton, second. Yeah, is that okay? And we need to switch off the live feed. Is that done? No, he's just doing that now. Yeah. Oh, we just need to check upstairs. Okay.